Wednesday, October 25th, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Bob Harris. This is the Football Diehards YouTube channel, and it's time to go on the hot seat. But first, FootballDiehards.com is the website. We appreciate you joining us here on the channel every Wednesday at this time, also on Saturdays at noon for our Ask Me Anything sessions. Always enjoy those. Hit the subscribe button, the notification bell if you've already done those things. The like button awaits you. I'm going to dislike us, so if anyone wants to jump in, the seal is broken. You're more than welcome to hit either one and feel good about yourself. Great news, people. Everybody is playing this week. There are no buys. Less great news. Not everybody who's playing is going to be available. There are injuries this week. Worse news. Some of the ones that are playing are going to suck. The best news? I have a great guest who's going to sort it all out for you. Every last thing you know from Fantasy Pros, Betting Pros, the Fantasy Black Book series, and my good friend, Joe Pisapia. Joe, welcome to the program. How are you today?
I'm great. I love this. I show up in the magical box there. This is really cool. I like this. And I also like that I'm sort of fortified from you, Bob, because you're a dangerous man. Everybody knows that.
You're like I'm kind of caged here too. I can't get out of this area I'm in. So everybody is safe. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the program. Mike Levine. Hi, Jim. Hi, John. Good to see everybody. Pop your questions in the chat as we go along. Happy to take those. We're going to talk about a few things here as we get into that. Some news right off the top, Joe. The Deshaun Watson. Hello, Dame. Hello, Royal Slade. Thanks for coming. Some news right off the top. The Deshaun Watson situation. What the hell, Joe? What do you make of this? I feel like they're like, ever since Kevin Stefanski came out and did the he's cleared but he's not playing thing, they put this in a weird place, and I don't think it's getting any less weird.
I don't think it's getting any less weird either, which I think is very frustrating for the Cleveland Browns organization. I'm sure it's frustrating for Stefanski, and it's frustrating for fantasy managers. We're in a very difficult spot because I think a lot of us felt like, all right, Deshaun Watson in Superflex is an interesting gamble this year. If he can get back to being the guy that he was a few years ago, he's not a good quarterback. He's an elite quarterback in fantasy. And that's a big enough roll of the dice where you're like, I'm ready for that. I'm ready for the outcome of that happening. And it really hasn't happened. PJ Walker has been that guy, and he's led them to, 2 big victories now, 2 weeks in a row. It's hard to take him out. And the bigger picture is what this Deshaun Watson contract is going to do now to this organization in the future, because not only how much they're paying him, I think the cap hit next year, if I remember correctly, is $68 million or something absurd like that, where you just can't even wrap your mind around what that number is. So they're stuck here. So it is a very precarious situation here, not just for the week to week here, but the long-term situation where this could be one of the worst moves in NFL history. And unfortunately, the Cleveland Browns sort of have a knack for doing that. If you look back historically, whether it be via drafts or via trades or via other things they've done. So it's a really difficult situation. And look, I got to give PJ Walker credit. He is, shown up here in these games, and he's kind of like Jacoby Brissett last year. Like, the team seems to rally around him a little bit, and that's an important quality. And that doesn't seem to be the case for Watson, for whatever reason. So take from that what you will. Very frustrating. And it's also been a frustrating offense too. I mean, that Nick Chubb injury right out of the jump there has really been tough for them. And they've been able to stay competitive. That defense has been just brilliant. Myles Garrett's having a hell of a year. And defense travels. At the end of the day, that's why I like the Browns this week too. Like, I like their underdogs. I don't know why, because that defense travels. So as long as they keep playing that defense, I'm going to keep betting on the Browns and using them in fantasy.
I'm with you on that, and I just wonder how much of this, as long as we're winning, why change it up? A few more people jumping into the chat. Hi, Andrea. Hello, John Bonneville. John Bonneville, of course, with the obligatory massage issues for Watson. We knew that was coming, right? So appreciate that. And hello. It's John Fusek. This is horrible news. His cat did not come home last night. He's looking for him. I hope you find him, John. I've experienced this. You'll find that they often stay away for a day. He'll be back. I'm hoping for the best there.
Doesn't that happen with Mike Dempsey and you too? Like, Mike Dempsey has to stay away from you. Doesn't it happen with Mike Dempsey? Sometimes you lose him for like a day, and then he just comes back. I feel like that happens.
I try, but he never goes away. Some other situations that we're looking at, heading into this one. Kyler Murray's working fully. I mean, at some point he's going to be back. What do you make of him? I mean, first of all, what do you make of the situation? Do you think the Cardinals, I mean, I kind of thought going into the year maybe the Cardinals were in tank mode. The players probably not so much, but management. Now it seems like they're not. Do you feel like they're going to get him back in the mix? They say they want to. Do you believe this?
I do. I believe that they will, and they're going to sooner than later. I don't know if it's this week. I think that might be asking a lot, despite the fact that he's fully practicing. The guy hasn't played football in a long time. Like, you need to give him some reps before he jumps back in there, especially when you consider that offensive line, which is terrible. You know, when you watch that game last week against Seattle, I mean, guys just ran past people in offensive line. Like, they had no will to block anybody. They had no idea where the pass protection should be. And the last thing you want to do is throw your franchise quarterback back there in that kind of situation. That's eventually going to happen. So I've gotten a lot of Kyler Murray questions the last couple of weeks because a lot of people have picked him up recently in those single quarterback leagues. And I keep saying, look, you know, quarterback has been rough out there right now. You know, and now this Purdy injury on top of Fields, on top of the Watson news, on top of a lot of situations. You know, so quarterback is a little thin, and some of the play on the bottom tier has been questionable. So Murray is an interesting piece because people, I think, view Murray as a top-level fantasy quarterback. And to which I said, like, if you've already got Trevor Lawrence, you've already got somebody that's pretty good, and you have Murray on your roster, trade him now. Like, now is the time to trade him before you see what he looks like when he comes back. Is he rusty? Is that offensive line bad enough that it gets him hurt again? There's so many reasons to move on from Kyler Murray right now. Now, in Superflex, a little different situation. But I think in that single quarterback league, I think you really think long and hard about it and say, he's got some value right now on the open market. And I always feel like whenever you trade somebody as they're coming back from an injury, it's always where their value is the best before they get back on the field and disappoint anybody. So in a single quarterback league, if you've got him and you've got somebody who is at least in that conversation of the QB1 kind of guys, like you've got Kirk Cousins, you've got Trevor Lawrence, any of those guys, trade Kyler Murray because somebody else can use him and somebody else has got buys coming up. So that's my advice is if you have him, package him in a deal and try to get better somewhere else on your roster.
Totally true. Quick question from Andrea here. Have we heard anything on David Montgomery? It doesn't sound positive for him. Sound like it's going to be a couple of weeks. You hearing anything differently, Joe, that Montgomery might make it back this week?
No, and this is why I kept telling everybody for weeks now, people got so frustrated with Jahmyr Gibbs, and I don't know why. They have no patience. You got to be patient here. I know it was a blowout, it was an embarrassing game there for the Baltimore Ravens and the Detroit Lions last week, but at the same time, I think you turn back and you look at it and you say, okay, the positives were Jahmyr Gibbs got the carries. Jahmyr Gibbs had his first touchdown of his career. And if you look back historically, most of these running backs, it does, if you go back to DeAndre Swift's rookie year, if you go back to David Montgomery's rookie year, right, the aforementioned, Jonathan Taylor, most of those guys didn't pop until the last 6 weeks of the season.
Right.
So Jahmyr Gibbs is one of these guys that even when Montgomery comes back, I don't think Gibbs just goes away. I think Gibbs is in that normal rookie running back learning curve. So to me, Gibbs is a very valuable piece the rest of the season, and I think you could still get him in a trade. But no, I don't think Montgomery is trending towards playing this week. It doesn't seem like it's going in that direction unless something drastically changes on Friday. But if he doesn't, I think you go right back to Jahmyr Gibbs, and he will get more carries, and he will get more touches. He's a great pass catcher, and I think we're just starting to see how good he could be in the NFL. So patience for those of you who have him, because you might have basically locked up a really intriguing piece for the second half of the season.
Patience. That's what I've been preaching with him. With Darren Waller, we've seen the last 3 games, 2 tight end, 7 performances, target shares up in the 25 plus, over 30% a couple of times of those 2 and 3 in a row for him. So a lot of these players that didn't come through. Look, people, we're like just over a third of the way into the season. I know that you get a little panicky when you don't have the win-loss record you want right now, but there's still some season left. Keep grinding, keep trusting some of these players, or at least the ones you've held on to. And I like when you're drafting people like not Jahmyr Gibbs, because I didn't draft him like that, but let's say a Dalton Kincaid. You should have been drafting him as an eye on the second half of the season. Then what did we see last week? He starts to come on. Now Dawson Knox is hurt. I think you're going to start to see some of these players that we invested in, maybe expecting, like we're fantasy managers. We expect the best right out of the chute, but realistically, we should know that it's going to take a little time. So, by the way, Andrea, it's a Monday night game. So the first practice of the week won't be until Thursday. Then they won't put out the injury report until Saturday. So you might have to play that one out a little bit. I wanted to ask you about something that I've been thinking about a lot is, just in general, the volatility of the NFL. I mean, it's designed to be, for surprising outcomes and unexpected things to happen every week. It goes all the way to the design of the football. It's an oblong spheroid. They want it to bounce funny ways, right? So from a fantasy perspective, my contention is you hang your hat on volume to the degree you can, right? I mean, volume is is what wins us, positional battles each week, right? If you have guys with volume, they don't all do everything with it, but it's the starting point. How do you handle the other pieces though? Because there are guys that we know aren't going to be sure volume plays. How do you handle the uncertain situations? What's your approach to sorting through situations? Is it more matchup based? Is it anticipated role based? A combination of all these things?
Well, and then there's the third piece too, which you didn't even mention, which is the guys who get volume and don't do anything with it, like Joe Mixon, who's been
Rashad White.
Rashad White, right? Where it's just, here's a bunch of empty calories, basically, is what
Right.
you're getting out of these guys. I mean, Mixon has 1 touchdown and he's RB23 in half-point PPR right now. I mean, it's madness. So yeah, you think that that's going to get better, and you hope that as Joe Burrow gets healthy, that goes apart. But to your bigger question here, which is, what do you do with some of these situations that have been really frustrating this year? And they have been. A lot of them stem from the running back position. So let's be honest, that's where they've come from. So, the top of my board this year was Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill. Those are the top 3 players on my board. If I could get any of those guys in the first 5, I'm very happy. Now, I know McCaffrey's been incredibly consistent, but outside of McCaffrey, can kind of run down these running backs, and it has been tough. And, I know a lot of people still like the late QB and all this stuff, but if you have Patrick Mahomes winning you weeks, and if you have Jalen Hurts winning you weeks, because those guys control all the scoring in their offense to a certain degree, like Lamar Jackson last week too. These rushing quarterbacks, I think you can start to make a case for them. And I've been trying to do that for the last 2 years, where it's okay to take those guys in the 3rd round. It's okay to start taking those guys that control the scoring. It's not just the volume, but it's specifically the scoring. If Jalen Hurts is throwing a touchdown, he gets points. If he's rushing in a touchdown, he gets points. If he's rushing, he gets points. So, it's that changing of the mindset of saying, the NFL has evolved, it's changed. And if you've waited on running back, right, you waited, you got guys like David Montgomery, you got guys, potentially who have really outperformed. I mean, think about the waiver wire this year too. The guys that have popped on there have been unbelievable. Some of them that have really carried some teams, but Pacheco has been another one of those guys that's, late running back, right? So if you're looking, it's funny, you go on the ECR and Fantasy Pros and you go look at the names on the, the RB1 slate. It's guys like Raheem Mostert. It's guys like DeAndre Swift, Isaiah Pacheco. Like, it's not the usual suspects that you anticipate seeing here. And I think we're also in a transition mode too, where some of these running backs are starting to age out. You're starting to see some of this influx of the Bijan Robinsons and the Gibbs and some other rookie running backs coming through. And you'll see that probably again next year. And this happens every so often. I feel like this does happen every few years. So it'll start to get a little better. Well, it'll be a little bit more consistency. But right now, I think we're in a rock and a hard place between the guys that are still young and learning the game and these rookies that are coming in, first, second year guys, and then these guys that have stayed a little too long at the dance. So that is a very difficult situation. But it's a wide receiver heavy league. The best reaction I could tell people is, like the 5th player on my board was A.J. Brown.
Right.
So, I mean, just going out, 4 of my top 5 players this year were wide receivers. And I can guarantee you most people didn't have that, but I think that is the path forward to kind of mitigate some of this risk you're talking about in the volatility. It's really hurting a lot of us.
Yeah, Doug Lewis out here with KJ Osborne, all volume with no production. Yeah, we're seeing that, right? And by the way, everyone, if you don't know Joe Pisapia, I can't imagine that. But the Fantasy Black Book is one of the great resources out there. I'm told there's one for baseball. I don't even know what baseball is.
I'm working on it right now. I'm working on it right now, Bob.
But the football version. Yeah. So, like, how much is this volatility? And so as you go year to year, Joe, I'm just curious how much these kind of trends and the things we're seeing, how do they factor into like the relative positional value that you kind of focus on?
A great deal. A great deal, because you see the consistency of the wide receivers. You see the volatility of the running backs. Now, sure, it's great to have a bell cow running back, but I also think it's starting to beg the bigger question too, Bob, which is we need to look at, how we started moving towards a lot more super flex, right? And that's a very popular format. Almost all dynasty leagues nowadays are super flex to startups. And that's a good thing, because you want to utilize the quarterback position, because that's what the NFL is. I don't like the evolution of the 2 wide receiver league that seems to be a popular thing nowadays. I think it's ridiculous. If anything, we should be moving to a quarterback, running back, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, and 2 flexes, because then you kind of have open season. I think that format is going to be a lot easier to manage in the years to come for what the NFL is evolving into, where it's a lot of running backs by committee. It's a lot of guys who, you don't see the 25 carries a game. That stuff is, for a handful of guys, barely nowadays. So it's a very different universe. So I'd like to see the game start to catch up with that and be ahead of the curve. But the relative position value speaks to it, where the consistency year over year are these quarterbacks, the quarterbacks, one of those things, but also the wide receivers who consistently put up those points, especially these guys who are in their prime years, and you can really count on them, and the injury quotient is just far less. I mean, look at the run Stephon Diggs has had the last 4 years. Look at the run Devontae Adams has had. Look at the run that Justin Jefferson's had the last few years. Jamar Chase has had some injuries, unfortunately. Keenan Allen, another, right. So you mentioned all these names, but how many running backs can you say have had 4 really good years? It's McCaffrey, kind of, sort of, but he's got some injuries there in between. Alvin Kamara, has had some really consistent years. He's a very consistent back. Derrick Henry's been very consistent, but now you're talking about guys that are 5-6 years in the league, and they're kind of at the end of that productivity period if you go back and look at all the data.
Yeah, totally true. All right, kids, I see the questions piling up here. I see you out there, Jay Felicio. Eagle screams to you, our friend from Front Yard Fantasy. There's tons of injury information. There's tons of injuries out there. People go to the FootballDiehards.com website. You will find the full list up there right now. I'll be doing updates all night, overnight. That'll kind of get you up to speed on where everyone's at. So check into the site early tomorrow to see if all your players are, maybe not, all those things. And we'll get to some of those in the questions here. But I do want to get to the questions in case some of you just dialed this up and you're wondering who the hell we are. I'm Bob Harris. He's Joe Pisapia. He's fantastic. Fantasy Pros, Betting Pros, a host on Sports Grid. He knows about wrestling. He knows about baseball. And he knows a hell of a lot about football, author of the Fantasy Black Book series, which is like a best-selling thing on Amazon. It's amazing how I've watched this thing from the genesis, from the very beginning, and it's been amazing to see the explosive growth that Joe Pisapia has shown. And he's an amazing guy, and happy to have him on the program today. And you'll be happy, too, as he starts answering some of these questions that are way above my pay grade. So let's jump into some of them, Joe. We'll kind of spin these off into some conversations as we see fit here, if we find something super interesting. Mike Levine has Godwin in 2 leagues, both PPR. League 1, Godwin or Drake London. Hollywood Brown or Dobbs. League 2, Godwin or Pickens or Sutton. So let's tackle League 1, Godwin, London, Hollywood, and Dobbs.
We're trying to pick one of them? Is that what we're trying to do?
He wants one of them. That's what it looks like.
Oh, all right. Well, look, the Godwin situation to me
looks like two questions. If I parse this correctly, let me parse this correctly. Godwin or London, and Hollywood or Dobbs. Let's do it like that.
Well, despite the fact that I'm concerned about Desmond Ridder these last few weeks, especially him on the road, has not been very good. I'm going to go with Drake London here and hope for the best in this one against Tennessee, because with Will Levis and Malik Willis playing quarterback, I don't know how much they're going to throw the football, which means I think there's going to be extra opportunities there. My concern here, as we've got the, short week here, which is a good thing for Buffalo, where I don't think they should dwell too much on that Patriot game. That's probably not good for their psyche. That's not what you want to have happen there. So I anticipate them taking it out on Baker Mayfield. And the most disturbing thing was watching Baker Mayfield on Sunday continuously throw into double coverages, Bob, all day long. He should have had so many more interceptions. And that's the Baker Mayfield that scares the heck out of me. And that's the one that's a drive killer. It's a fantasy points killer. And that's the guy I saw. So all that good favor that he had, remember when he opened that first couple weeks of the season, Baker Mayfield doesn't have any picks. Oh, what a beautiful time to be alive. That time is ending. And it's going to end soon. And I think it's going to end Thursday. It's going to end poorly, I think, for Baker Mayfield. So give me Drake London in that situation here on Sunday instead.
Totally agreed. London, by the way, I want to say the numbers kind of bear this out. What do we got here? More than 23%, better than 23% target share in each of the last 4 games. Has double-digit fantasy points, just over 10. I want to say 11 points. And there's some touchdown equity there. Hollywood Brown kind of has been a little confounding. The weeks that I want to play the hell out of him, he goes away. In the weeks that I say, man, I don't want anything to do with this guy, he comes up big. Dubs seems like a pretty good spot. Is Jordan Love doing enough for you? Which of these two would you prefer?
Yeah, so it's Godwin or Brown now. That's the second one, right?
Hollywood Brown or Dobbs.
Or Dobbs. Oh, I'm sorry. That's an interesting one here. Marquise Hollywood Brown, by the way, 10 targets, 11 targets, and then 7 last week. So a little disappointing there, but Again, they had all sorts of problems on the offensive line. They're playing Baltimore this week. This should be a pretty tough one. I mean, I know they're at home. So the volume that Marquise Hollywood-Brown is very good. Now, on the flip side of that, talking about Romeo Doubs, he seems to be the only guy that Jordan Love has eyes for, which is really frustrating because I had a lot of Christian Watson investments last weekend, and it did not go well. And all I kept watching was Christian Watson be open everywhere all the time, and Jordan Love never even look at him. So I'm going to go with Marquise Hollywood-Brown here because I think the Vikings not only win that game in Green Bay, because they've played well in Green Bay the last few years anyway. I think Love is just not in a good spot right now. Not that, look, the Arizona Cardinal offense is great by any stretch, but up until last week, that target volume is there. And we talk about volume getting king. Give me more outs. Give me more opportunities for fantasy points. I think Brown just gives you more.
I'm chasing the volume there. Godwin over Pickens. I'm playing Pickens in this one over Sutton and Godwin as well. How about you?
Say that one more time. Pickens over Godwin and Sutton.
Pickens or Sutton, one of the three.
I'm really tempted about Pickens because it's starting to feel like Pickens is. Do you get that feeling too, Bob, when you're watching that?
I do.
Pickens is that guy that he's looking for.
It is. It just seems like it.
It does seem like that. So I'm going to go with Pickens here. The Jacksonville secondary is not very good. You could throw on them. Derek Carr should have had more touchdowns. If anybody could have caught a ball for him in the end zone, that would have been nice. I'm talking to you, Foster Moreau. But George Pickens, I think.
You feel bad enough already, Joe.
Well, look at the last two games for Pickens, 130 with 6 catches and then 5 for 107. I think we have to acknowledge what's happening here, which is a confidence of Kenny Pickett in George Pickens and starting to be a little bit more confident too. We saw Pickett start to audible more, start to do more things in that Rams game where he looked a little bit more comfortable coming out of that bye, a little bit more in control of the offense, and I like that. I think a quarterback needs to have control of what's going on there, so I'm going to take Pickens in this scenario.
I am as well. And I'd probably take Sutton over Godwin to this one as well. Going against Kansas City, he's been, he seems to be the piece there that is semi-reliable in that receiving core. Mm-hmm. Just something you just said, the Pickett and Pickens. I mean, I can remember August when people started, identifying Pickett as like a year 2 breakout QB. Like some of the things we think are going to happen is something Joe talked about early in this broadcast and something we've discussed over time is things don't happen as immediately as we want. And sometimes the things we expect to happen in their own due time. And it's like going to be great when it happens. You might have to hold out, but it's just going back to what Joe said. You have to be a little patient. That means having room on your rosters. It's going to be dependent on a lot of things. But a lot of times the things that I think in May are the things that have happened when the season is over, right? Like we end up being right about things, just not right in the time we want to be right. Mm-hmm. So hang tight, people. Here's one. Kevin Payne's. Gibbs. It wasn't pretty, but it was Gibbs. I'm with you, man. I've been waiting for that all year. Appreciate everyone coming again. Hi, Troy. I hope you catch up when you watch later. Joe says hi. Watson. Okay, so here we go. Please rank, Joe. Please rank.
Okay.
Amon-Ra St. Brown versus Las Vegas. Look at John. He knows how to do this with the opponent listed in there. Waddle versus New England. Thielen versus Carolina. Kupp versus Dallas, Amari Cooper versus Seattle. You have to sit one. Seems like pretty easy for me, but go ahead, Joe.
Well, Kupp is playing, Amon-Ra's playing. Off the top of my head, it was a Thielen's playing. Who was the other one that was left here? Amari Cooper?
Amari Cooper. And Waddle is in the mix as well.
Well, look, if Waddle is, again, right now, Waddle's banged up a little bit, so I think you wait a little bit. But, I mean, Cooper's probably the odd man out for me, Bob, at this point. I mean, I want my best players on the field. He's got to be a lower on that tier. And like, in large part, because P.J. Walker and him have not really gotten on the same page that much. So, there's been some opportunities. They've been close, but they haven't really connected. So, maybe it'll get better over time. Right? Yeah.
Right. Cooper makes big plays, but these other guys seem like, and Waddle less so. I mean, between St. Brown, Thielen, Kupp, I'm listing them in the order he has them, not the order I like them. I think those 3 guys have been money over the last month, or at least Kupp since his return.
And look, Waddle's dealing with that back injury, but also Tyreek Hill's dealing with an injury too right now. So if for some reason that hip is not 100% right, there, like if Waddle trends in a better direction here for the next couple of days, he could see a little bit more volume than people realize too. So he's definitely not a guy you could sit.
Yeah, so it's Waddle it's Cooper if Waddle is healthy, and it's Waddle if he's not and Cooper plays. So there you go, John. That's a good group of players to have.
Good problems to have, yeah.
feel like that was like a bit of a show-off question, John. Way to go. And another league. Okay, Alfredo Perez wants to know Swift or Tyler Algier, Joe.
DeAndre Swift, for sure. Yeah, I mean, look, I am not jumping off this Bijan Robinson train. I'm just not going to do it. No matter how frustrating last week was, and it was frustrating. I lost a matchup by one single point because of the Bijan Robinson situation. It was terrible. It was awful. I'm not going to lie. And I know a lot of people had a lot of stories like that too, not just me, but I'm not buying into this. And this is another guy too. If you could buy him right now, this is his lowest value all year. I would be buying everywhere, wherever you could on Bijan. He's a special player, and I think he's going to have a very good second half of this year, and I think they're going to give him the football quite a bit going forward to make up for last week.
So I didn't invest heavily in Bijan because I was investing in the other rookie with high draft capital. His name was Jahmyr Gibbs. We all see how that's working out for me. Maybe starting now. I'm hanging in there. But last week was the first week that I saw that I in my tournament lineups, which I love to do for the DFS, as everyone knows, my lottery tickets on Sunday, there was some Bijan, and so it was a little sad, and we were all shaking our fist at our X device going, what the hell? Beat writers, where are you, people? And they didn't know a damn thing either. So yeah, I agree with you. I think down the stretch, Bijan's going to be fantastic, and he does look every bit as good as everyone said. Has to sit one of these, says John. Devontae Adams. How do you have to sit Devontae Adams? Let's finish the question. Devontae Adams versus Detroit. DJ Moore versus the Chargers. Kirk versus Pittsburgh. Thielen versus Houston. And Dubs versus Minnesota. Joe.
Dobbs is Romeo Dobbs is the obvious one here.
Right. Yeah. You can't sit any of those other guys. If I told you sit Devontae Adams, John, what would you tell me? I hope you would slap me hard in the face. Because I deserve it.
Well, this is when you start to overanalyze. Like, this is when I think you look at it, and if you need Dobbs to play, you say, okay, well, there's a case you could make for Dobbs being productive, right? There's a case you can make for him going out there and leading the team in targets, and Musgrave is, banged up too. Like, and Dobbs has been a guy that Jordan Love, again, actually sees on the field, which is great. But not over the other talents we're talking about, no matter how cryptic some of the quarterback situations might be and how disappointing they might be. I think you have to put the best talents you have on the field well above somebody like Romeo Dobbs. Even if it's wrong, the process is right. I think that's something that people have to understand.
That's the point here, right? Like you might have hunches. I might have hunches like, I just feel like this is going to be a bad week for Adams. I feel like it. This is not the path to winning fantasy football. The feel like, I mean, you're welcome to play your hunches. I tell you this all the time. Don't play my hunches, play your hunches and feel good about it and deal with it when it's over. But when you have a list of players like that, I think that's what we tend to do, Joe. As fantasy managers, our tendency is to outsmart ourselves, right? We will sit here and talk ourselves into some crazy nonsense that we have no business talking ourselves into because that's part of the fun of the game. But be careful, keep it logical. Just look at the numbers, John. That would be my suggestion too. Go to your league website and go to the stats for all these players and sort and kind of like avoid the names and look at the numbers a little bit. It's very helpful. Jim had to pick up a tight end for Ingram's bye next week. The top available were Taysom Hill, David Njoku, or Trey McBride. He went on and got McBride on the Ertz injury news. Ertz now on injured reserve. Trey McBride was coming on a little bit as is before this news even. How do you feel about his choice there, Joe?
How do I feel about playing Trey McBride this week? Great. I mean, I'd rather play Taysom Hill this week if he's available on the waiver wire. And statistics will claim that he is. Kincaid is another guy that is on a lot of waiver wires too. So I think when you're looking at that, again, it's not a matter of just, I like Trey McBride. He's a good prospect. He was a hell of a college player too. So there's a lot to like there. It's just when we're looking at some of these scenarios, I think you want to look for better quarterback play. You want to look for the totals. You want to look for, guys who are getting opportunity in the volume. Like, Taysom Hill gets work. It's not always what you expect, but it ends up equating to fantasy points. So I think there's better options out there most likely, but if it's a really deep league and that's the situation you're in, then you roll with McBride. You hope for the best because he is a talented player. You hope he can kind of step in. And if he gets anything close to the volume Ertz has gotten sometimes, then it could be a good day.
If only he could play his own defense every week.
If only. If only.
But honestly, if those choices, I'd probably rather take a choice on McBride than Njoku. And I think you're right on Hill, generally speaking, but there are some weeks that Taysom Hill's a total dud, right? If he doesn't get the receiving work, he gets like the 2 carry week. So I don't know. I don't think McBride's a bad call here. I do think Taysom Hill has more upside though, Jim, but not against
It's
McBride,
more touchdown equity too. I think that's the big takeaway too, is that touchdown equity. If you're going to be a tight end one, you got to score a touchdown, right? That's pretty much like that'll get you over the hump if you get to that level. And I think Taysom Hill is one of these guys right now that's in play for that, the way this offense is run. So I like McBride too. Long term, I think he's going to be a good player in the NFL, and I'm hopeful that maybe Arizona can, draft a lineman next year or do something important that actually move things away. I'm a little frustrated about my Patriots though. I was looking forward to, getting that number 1 overall pick, and they went out and won this week, and I don't know how I feel about it. It's very mixed emotions. Very mixed emotions.
Again, it's early in the season. They might win a few more. It's halfway through the program. I'm Bob Harris. This is the Football Diehards YouTube channel. On the hot seat with the great Joe Pisapia, Fantasy Pros, Betting Pros, author of the Fantasy Black Book series. If you don't already follow him on Twitter or X, you can call it whatever you want. I'll call it Twitter because I'm old and stuck in my ways. At Joe Pisapia 17, that's Pisapia 17. Joe is fantastic, one of the great guys in the industry, not just, sitting around talking to you on a screen, but in human form, like one of the truly great people that I've met in this industry. So,
likewise,
happy
Bob.
to come on, Joe.
Right back at
So, Joe sent me for the best pizza ever on the face of the earth, too, and during my visit to New York, after he showed me some sword fighting. So,
does it haunt you? Does it haunt you still to this day, right? The smell,
Yeah, I would love it. I want to go back just to have that pizza.
It's certainly worth it. I'll go with you next time. I'll go with you. I got more time nowadays. So
it's called Spumoni Gardens, right? Was that the name of the place?
Right. L&B Spumoni Gardens. That's right. In the heart of Brooklyn, not too far from where I grew up.
Right over the bridge.
Actually, my cousin a couple weeks ago brought back a couple pies. She was going through New York and she was stopping over, and I said, I smell something in your car. Please tell me that's square pie. You got to get the square pie from there. That's what you got to get. It's very good. It's a whole different experience. The sauce on top, the whole thing, change around. Now I'm getting hungry thinking about the pizza.
Right. I am too. Here we go. Let's get into this. Dominic Conti needs to know. Alfredo Perez. Dallas or Jets? We're talking defense here, Joe. Dallas seems to have kind of fallen off a little bit. I don't know if Trayvon Diggs, who, by the way, successful surgery today. Any interest, any major leanings on the Jets over the Dallas Cowboys like I have?
Yeah, look, I know the last 2 weeks have been a little rough here. They played San Fran, they played the Chargers. I think coming out of the bye, it's hard not to play them. But if you're in a situation where you are just desperate for a W here and you want to take advantage of a really great matchup for the Jets defense, I don't think it's a problem. I wouldn't, the Dallas Cowboys defense is still the number 1 defense in fantasy. They finished 1-3-2, but they've also had a 26 finish, a 26 finish, and a 26 finish. So that's the problem. It is boom or bust, and I get that. So I think a lot of this has to do with your record right now. If you're a sub 500 team, I think you play the Jets this week, and they're already past their bye, and the Jets defense should be in a good situation. And the thing they like about the Dallas defense is they have the opportunity to score, a lot. That's that kind of defense. It's, very explosive and creates turnovers. Yeah. Now, less so without Diggs, but still they create those turnovers. The Jets defense very good in terms of limiting points, so it's a little different. So look at your scoring, figure that out. But I think if you were more of if you're an under 500 team right now, in that sense, then I think you probably play the Jets this week, because this week the matchup against the Giants is just too good, and the way that team is played. And look, they are on the opposite trend, right? They finished the 3rd and the 6th ranked defense the last 2 weeks.
Right. That's why that's my leaning there for that reason. The matchup kind of puts it over. But I'm with you. The disruptive playmakers playmaker, Micah Parsons is like playing next level. It's like the Myles Garrett Jr. So, So there we go. Sit 2 of this group here, says Dominic Conti. Evans at Buffalo, Hollywood versus Baltimore. Jacoby Myers, I don't know how you sit him anymore, against Detroit. Deontay Johnson versus Jacksonville. Hopkins versus Atlanta. Downs versus
Hopkins
Saints.
Sitting.
Yeah,
that's sure. The last one.
For sure. I'm probably sitting Downs as well. I know the volume's been great, but it's the Saints. Is it between Johnson and Downs for you, or is Myers in that conversation?
No, Myers has got to start in a full point PPR. I think he's too consistent. I mean, he's just been excellent. So outside of that 1 week 4 game, and of course the game, and he did not play, guy's been tremendous. Like, I mean, Jacoby Myers has been excellent. Again, I keep coming back to, my concerns with Baker Mayfield, but it's really hard to sit Evans. Downs has been brilliant.
He has been.
So I really don't want to sit him. To be honest with you, in this situation, I think I would play Downs, and I would probably sit either Deontay or Marquise Hollywood Brown. Maybe Hollywood Brown. This is where you don't like the trend line, you don't like where things are going. Now, the temptation will be if Kyler Murray comes back, does that change people's mind this week? It might. It might make him overinflated a little bit too. But it's really hard to ignore Downs in these last couple weeks. But I understand not wanting to do it. You can't say he's touchdown dependent because, 6 for 97, 5 for 125, 2 of the last 3 games. So he's getting it done that way too. I don't think this is going to
targets too.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to lose your matchup. Like, I don't think this decision is going to lose you a matchup. I think if anything, I would play Downs over Hollywood Brown because the implied team total is a little higher too. I think that's when you start to look at the Vegas stuff a little bit, and you start to look at, okay, how many points are on the board for Arizona? How many points are on the board maybe for Indianapolis? And I think more points are on the board for Indianapolis. That's kind of your tie-breaking decision there.
Jacoby Myers right now, wide receiver 15, I want to say, on the season. It's been good. He's missed games. He's missed a game.
Definitely. I mean, despite missing the game, if he's at 15, that's pretty impressive. I'm not exactly sure. You think he's that high? He might be. I got to look right now, but that's
see where he's at.
Myers. Let's see. Jacoby Myers in half-point PPR is wide receiver 14, and he is wide receiver 12 in full PPR. How about that?
There you have it.
How about that? Look, that's a guy that just fits this quarterback.
Right? Poor Hunter
He fits what Garoppolo does well. Quick slants over the middle.
Renfro.
That's it. Yeah, poor Hunter Renfro, exactly.
Poor Hunter Renfro. I've good luck to him on his new team.
Yeah.
So hopefully we get there. But Dave Listman is putting down his Arthur Smith voodoo doll, like we all are. He's started Bijan, sat Foreman, Deontay, big game. Because of going late QB in a standard league draft, rank these available gems: Baker, Pickett, Minshew, Love, and Tyrod Taylor.
So what do you got to do? We got to start one of these guys. We're going to stream one. Is that what's happening?
Like, what order would we like him in? I think he's got to pick somebody up or grab somebody, from the waiver wire. So, like, so Baker, Pickett, Minshew, Love, Tyrod. Not sure Tyrod's going to play. I think he is.
I'm not sure Tyrod's going to play. And the problem is if you are streaming Baker, you're going to have to pick him up now. It's a tricky one here. Kenny Pickett against Jacksonville, I think, is a safe play. I think he's going to finish in that top 15 quarterbacks this week. I think that's where I would lean. And if you want to wait a little longer, do you want to take a shot, Bob, if Brock Purdy doesn't play? Which most of the time, if you're in concussion protocol, you don't play the following week. Do you want to take a shot with Darnold with those weapons? That would be an intriguing one, too. So because of that, I don't want to take Mayfield. Yeah, I don't want to take Mayfield quite yet. Like, I'd rather wait and go the Pickett option or Darnold.
I think I'm going to go Pickett, and then if this was the list, and and I'm assuming Darnold's probably out there, but if he's not, but I'd go Pickett.
Oh, he's out there.
I don't want to really play against New Orleans. Probably Love against Minnesota. Pickett, Love. Tyrod. I don't really want to play this. So Pickett, Love, Tyrod, Baker. And then maybe pick up Darnold. I think that's a fair point because I'm with you. I think there's exactly one player has returned from the concussion in 1 week all season long. So keep that in mind. In the QB two QB league, Joe, as his number 2 league, Dominic Conti wants to know PJ Walker against Seattle, Will Levis versus Atlanta. I think I know my direction. Where will you go here?
PJ time. Let's go. Let's get the PJs on. Let's go.
It's serviceable, man. It's not been like the worst thing in the world. It's not great, but I don't know what the hell Levis is going to do. We hear, in case you haven't been following along at home, Ryan Tannehill did not practice today. Seems like he's not going to play, and the talk comes from Mike Vrabel. He would know that they're going to play both those quarterbacks, but the reporting, Ian Rappaport has come out with that they're preparing to start Levis, and maybe Willis will see some time. So it seems like a convoluted mess there I want to avoid. By the way, not easy to throw the football against Atlanta. So that makes it a little
No,
easier.
not at all. Hey, Bob, what do you think about the Titans starting to jettison pieces too? Because it's starting to look like that's the direction they're going.
Yeah, once Byard goes, I mean, I think everyone's fair game. I think that's the
Byard
signal.
went,
That's like
they traded another linebacker. So I guess here's the next question too. If I know my answer to this question. If Derrick Henry got traded, where would you like to see him go? My answer is Baltimore. It's time for the Ravens to go all in and push in, and let's go. Because that gives them a different sort of running back that they have never had with Lamar Jackson, where you can have somebody that's going to beat up people between the tackles and be physical, and then you have all that speed of him and Zay Flowers and other guys. That would be my ideal landing spot. It would be time for Baltimore to just push the chips in and just make a run. What about you? What do you think in terms of
I think that's logical. Buffalo would be of interest to me
Buffalo's a good
to
one
some
too.
degree.
Yeah.
I think like if I want a desired landing spot, it would be like a team like the Rams, but I don't think they're in a position to do a deal like that. So
they don't have the draft capital, I don't think. Yeah.
Right. So
Rams don't have a lot of draft picks. That's not really their MO. They don't like draft picks.
Also,
Sean McVay's like,
but also they'll F those things if you give them a chance. And by the way, congratulations, Sean McVay, on the delivery of your young child.
He did the delivery?
Wasn't on the game day. He had the Rams released their transaction report today with delivery. John Jordan McVay. They listed him as a transaction. Nice. The birth of the son.
Let's hope he doesn't
well
get
done, Rams. But I'm kind of with you. I think the Baltimore seems to make the most sense. Although my speculative Keaton Mitchell shares would like it not to be. But hey, you might be a Tyjae Spears like piece, and then we can get rid of Gus and Justice because they're hard to figure out every damn week.
Oh, tell me about it.
I'm so selfish. Have we heard anything? Okay, would we trust Eckler or Kamara over Eckler this week? There's a second question here. Hearing anything about Eckler's health? Practice fully. The ankle's an ongoing thing. If you watched the game, you saw him at times leaning down, and the ankle was clearly an issue. I mean, it's bugging him. It's not 100%, and I think he'll continue to play through it. But we'll kind of put it in the context of that. So there's your answer, Ed. So Doug wants to know, would I trust Kamara over Eckler this week?
Yeah, I would 100%. Look, Kamara's getting so much work here in this offense. I mean, you're looking at I know the New England game was a little disappointing there, but it wasn't in a way because he had 22 carries for 80. But if you look at the other stats there, 13 receptions, 7 receptions, 12 receptions. I mean, this is a full point PPR. You're already starting in double digits just from the baseline of Kamara before you add in any touchdown equity or rushing equity. So I don't know how you can't start Kamara over him and feel better than Eckler. And Eckler is another one of these guys too that if you look at the work, same thing with Josh Jacobs. You look at these heavy workloads year over year, they tend not to be kind to them the next year. It's a very rare running back. Again, it's those special guys that really kind of buck the trends of being good every single season or having multiple productive seasons. It's just something that's getting harder and harder to find and harder to invest in.
Also, Joshua Kelly turns out to be so much 10 times better a player when Austin Eckler's there than when he's
How annoying is that? Can we talk about that? Is that not the most annoying thing for those people who I have one league where I chased him and I was like, okay, I think Eckler's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks because it's a high ankle. So I'm going to have a running back here on the Chargers and it's going to be good. No, it's not going to be good. And then Eckler comes back and everyone drops him and then he goes off. It's crazy.
Turns into Superman again. Clark Kent pulls out the cape. By the way, Kamara, 29 touches last week, including 12 catches. He has 55 touches in the last 2 games. He's averaged almost 10 targets. I want to say 9.5 targets over the last 4 games. That's a 28% target share in 2 of the last 4 games. That's volume, people. That's what I was talking about at the top of this program. Volume is the wellspring of fantasy production. You don't get points unless you've got the ball. I don't want to oversimplify, but I'm kind of oversimplifing.
Unless you're Tutu Atwell. Unless you're Tutu Atwell.
Let's see.
He's the only exception.
We talked a little bit, Jim, about the McBride with Ertz's injury, so I'll kind of gloss over that. If you missed it, play the replay. Jason Wilson, hi, Bob. Promise not to ask you any more Gabe Davis questions. Don't, because I'll get it wrong. The weeks I love him, he goes away. The weeks I hate him, he destroys me. Need 1 out of the 4 in PPR. James Cook versus Tampa Bay. Josh Downs versus Saints. Jahmyr Gibbs versus Raiders. Or Tank Dell versus the Panthers. Needs 1 of those.
Gibbs is the number 1 guy on that list for me, I think. How about you?
So, and I mean, we're pretty sure there's going to be no Montgomery. I mean, that might be a...
Again, as long as there's no Montgomery. if Montgomery plays, then that becomes okay. So let's give the two circumstances.
Monday night.
Montgomery, it's Gibbs. So in your opinion, Bob, if Montgomery is actually active for this game, who's the pivot point in your opinion?
Cook, but you got to know that you got to do that tomorrow night.
Right, but I mean, well, let's say you can't do that, so we got to put Cook aside, and we have to.
If I can't do that, it would be Josh Downs against the Saints. Take Dell's
that would be
coming
mine
off
too.
Concussion. I think he'll be back, but I do like C.J. Stroud this week. I like C.J. Stroud.
Downs. I like C.J. Stroud. Period. He was my number one quarterback on the board in the draft this year, and I feel very confident about that. And nothing made me happier than when all that Will Levis nonsense from Reddit hit the internet waves, and everybody started talking about Will Levis going too. And then I just kept betting again. I doubled down and I bet even more money because I got a better number on CJ Stroud going number 2 overall because all the lines went crazy. It was a good day. It's a good day. And CJ Stroud has not disappointed me since. I don't care what his test exams say. The dude can play quarterback at the end of the day. I don't really care. I don't care.
I'm with you. We're just catching up in the chat. Sounds like we did that first question from Michael Levino K1 in each of those groupings that we did of the wide receivers. So I'm happy that I didn't screw that up totally. Josh Downs versus DJ Moore. Love Josh Downs. Don't love his matchup. Love DJ Moore. It's against the Chargers. I don't care if it's Tyson's secret agent man or not. I'm going with DJ Moore. He's already the quarterback for the card with me.
I think you have to. But yeah, DJ Moore, look, if there was ever a good buy low week 1, right? Was it DJ Moore? I mean, geez, what a disappointing first week. Everybody was so mad. Then after that, 104, disappointing week 3, but then 131, 230. Unfortunately, last 2 weeks, a little less, not so great. But, look, you'll take the 8 catches for 54. At least that's, 13 points. At least it'll get you going, the PPR.
Yeah, DJ Moore, good football player. So is Josh Downs. Like I've been impressed with Josh Downs, and I think having Minshew there is worthwhile to him. This one's a little bit more about the matchup than it is the players themselves.
Somebody asked me this question yesterday, Bob. I think I'd love to get your take, and because it actually gave me pause, and then I was surprised at my answer. Somebody asked me this on Twitter yesterday, or the X, or whatever the hell it is. They asked me, in a dynasty league, would you rather have Josh Downs or Calvin Ridley? Bob, which one would you rather have?
So Calvin Ridley is another one where I'm going to say that I think he's eventually going to turn into the thing that I drafted him to be. Now that might be an overly optimistic, right? Because I think by the end of the draft season, we were drafting him at the tail end of round 2 and round 3 for sure. So, but he's been really close in some of these games, right? But the target.
He has, but he's only on a 1-year deal. And you don't know where he goes next year. And Downs is going to play with Anthony Richardson for the foreseeable future. So my answer was, in a dynasty league, I think I feel better about Downs, which sounded, I never thought I would never have given that answer 2 months ago. But now it's really turned on me.
I think that's possible in a dynasty. I still have to think it through. I still think Calvin really is very good.
I do too. That's why I struggled with the question, because it caught me off guard, and I was like, this is a really difficult question because I am supporting Ridley still. I see the same thing you do, which is you watch the games and you say, oh, it's so close. It's like he catches the ball in the wrong spot there, or like he doesn't break that one tackle. It's like all of these perfect storm things where things going negative with him.
I'm sitting here preaching volume. I was just glancing at the target totals, and I'm thinking, if I'm preaching volume, I'm probably should not be preaching Calvin Ridley right now. All right.
But I'm with you, Bob. I think he turns it around. Look, I mean, 20 targets in 3 weeks. That's not terrible. It's not terrible.
No, it's not as many as Christian Kirk.
Well, that's true. The question is it as many as Josh Downs? The answer is yes, it's the same, 20.
Is it the same?
It's exactly the same. 3 weeks. They've each had 20.
All right, then Calvin Ridley more upside, but a better anticipated role, right? I mean, Michael Pittman's always going to be the wide receiver 1 ahead of him. And Alec Pierce, I think he's easy to forget because he's kind of got a specific niche there, that deep threat, but he had a few targets too, and maybe he can come on a little bit with as the passing abilities of the quarterbacks kind of morph going forward. So it's a tough call, though. It's a tough question. All right. Jason Wilson wants to know I already did that one. I'm sorry, Jason Wilson. We've already done that, and you'll take our first answer and live with it. Herman has to drop one running back in a standard league. Who do we keep for the rest of the season? Foreman, Warren, Spears, or Wilson. I'm guessing that's Jeff Wilson Jr. So that's an interesting one. Foreman, Warren,
This is
Spears,
really
or Wilson.
hard. We can only keep one of them for the rest of the season?
Wow. He has to drop one.
Oh, he's to drop one. Well, I don't want to drop Spears because the next couple weeks, if Henry goes, then Spears becomes the guy there, and that's a very valuable situation. Warren has been very disappointing, but I wasn't somebody who was really in on Jalen Warren anyway. The drops are really concerning. The fumbles have been concerning. The other ones were Jeff Wilson, which he has got the clearest path this week. See, the problem is Deontay Foreman, what does that... Foreman was so good last week, but what does that look like with Roshan back and then Khalil Herbert back in a couple weeks? This is a really tricky one. I think Warren is the least appealing to me. I know that might sound odd.
In a standard, I think so. I think in a standard,
he's the least appealing. He has the least touchdown equity of those guys in terms of role split.
He's outscored Najee Harris every week, but this week, I think, in PPR.
Well, that hasn't been hard to do, but...
No, that's true. That's a low bar. Okay, I'm with you. I think it's Warren in this case. I'm hoping Wilson's role.
I would trade Warren though. I think Warren has value to somebody out there. So many people are hurting at RB. Okay. Warren has value as a flex RB type, even in a standard league. So if you have this kind of depth, don't just drop them. If anything, maybe put Warren and Foreman together and try to move up. Foreman's coming off his best game of the year, maybe one of the best of his career, probably too. Why not put those two guys together and see if you can move up to somebody else? Because if I'm them, I'd almost rather kind of move up to Mostert, have Mostert and Wilson, and kind of solidify that backfield a little bit. So at least I know, if one guy's not playing, I've got the other one, and I can slide them in and out. That's we're getting, as Pat Fitzmaurice put it to me, it's stuffing and handcuffing. That's where we're coming up here at Thanksgiving time. That's what Pat Fitzmaurice told me the other day on the show. It's time for handcuffing and stuffing. So this is the time where you start to look towards that a little bit, and I think that would be a more interesting piece, especially in a standard format.
Interesting. Okay, starting Kincaid Thursday or Njoku?
Kincaid. I think you got to play the upside there with the target volume. And Njoku's a very tough one to figure out because I think we all look at Njoku the same as if Njoku was on, let's say he played with Patrick Mahomes, right? If he was the tight end on the Chiefs, I think we would all be very pleased with the kind of player Njoku is. I don't think he's the kind of I think he's the kind of player that needs a great quarterback, but he has all the skill sets, all the physicality, everything you'd want out of a tight end, but it just doesn't seem to come to fruition ever within the offense of the Cleveland Browns, no matter who's playing quarterback.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Somewhere else next year. I want David Njoku with a good quarterback somewhere else next year. That's what I want for Christmas. Let's get that.
I would agree with that. TT Warrior, we only touched on the Tyreek Hill injury because we don't know enough about it yet. He did not practice today if y'all are just tuning in. My expectation is for a lot of these Miami players, they're going to be just fine by Friday, but it's something you're going to have to watch day by day. Better waiver wire ad, Latavius Murray or Cam Akers?
I think it's Latavius Murray. Again, I come back down to the touchdown equity. If they get close to the goal line there, I think Murray's probably that guy. Cam Akers did have that one good run, but he's not getting enough work, I don't think.
And he gets some route running in. We've got got a few minutes left, Joe, so we'll race through some of these a little bit to make sure we get everybody. Oh, by the way, Mr. Scampers, I kind of agree with this in his humble opinion. And he's a great cat, so he has a humble opinion. The case can be made to sell high on Bijan. His name value hasn't dropped with sharp players. He is special, but his usage has been a pretty big disappointment where he was drafted. Sell high still, even off a bad week.
I don't know about sell high. Look, I think Bijan Robinson still has value to certain people in your league.
You would trade for him.
Overpay. I would trade for him, absolutely. But would I overpay for him? I don't know if I'd overpay. I would rather have Breece Hall rest of season than Bijan right now. Yeah, so if that's a trade you can pull off, and you might be able to, that's a trade I would make.
All right, some quick hitters here. Rank Tyjae Spears if Henry is traded rest of season, full PPR. Running back 2?
Running back 2 overall, Bob? No.
Running back 2, weekly running back 2.
Yeah, I think he's right in the higher end of that potentially too, because it is such a run-heavy offense, and that's what they're going to do, especially if Tannehill... I mean, look, even when Tannehill was playing, I think you would agree, he was throwing softballs all over the place. He had no zip on the football at all. He looked done. So
I think we both say probably inside the top 20 for the rest of the season.
Yeah,
Maybe
like RB 18, 19, somewhere in that range. Yeah. I think that's where he would be. That's a really valuable piece.
Steve Pavey would like to know if we would sit Devonta Smith for Josh Palmer, Josh Downs, or Rashee Rice.
Oh, man. I know the stress level with people with Joe Mixon and Devonta Smith is off the charts. That's all anybody wants to ask me on the Instagram Live I did today. I still can't do it, Bob. I still got to play Devonta. I don't know.
I am with you. Royal Slade would like you to know that Myers would look good in the Patriots. Oh, wait. Yes, he would.
You know what's even more upsetting? I'll do you one better. That they're paying Juju Smith-Schuster the same amount of money that they could have had Jacoby Myers for. That is what's so annoying. It's not that we did get him. It's like, okay, if you don't want to pay Jacoby Myers, fine. Then move up the ladder. But instead they moved down the ladder and paid the same amount of money. I can't wrap my bald-headed brain around that. I can't.
Andrea needs 2. Rashee Rice versus Denver, Josh Downs versus New Orleans, Kendrick Bourne versus Miami, half-point PPR, Joe.
Look, I know Bourne's been good the last 2 weeks, but I think it's the other two. I think he's the odd man out for me.
I agree. Campers needs to need Darby. Who is that? Who am I missing? Eli Mitchell, Craig Reynolds, or McLaughlin. He rosters Javonte and Montgomery. So which of these guys would you get rid of? Oh, I guess it's who's Darby? What am I missing?
What? Elijah Mitchell, Craig Reynolds, and who was the third one?
The third one was McLaughlin, Jaleel McLaughlin.
I think I get rid of Craig Reynolds. I just don't think Reynolds has enough value for me. That's where I'm at. Like McLaughlin, if something happens to Javonte Williams, McLaughlin already kind of showed you that he could step in and do something.
I agree. Scott Fishbowl question: Minshew versus New Orleans or Mac Jones versus Miami?
I can't buy. This is tough times. As Dusty Rhodes would say, hard times, baby. This is hard times. I don't want to overrate what happened last week too much with Mac Jones. The Patriots offense is still a disaster. I don't love the mistakes that Minshew makes continuously that puts his team in a bad situation, and it's a good defense, but I'm going to go with Minshew barely here. What do you think, Pat? What do you think, Bob?
I think Pat knows better than Bob.
Pat would know better. Yeah. I was still thinking about what he told me the other day about the stuffing and cuffing. I was like, "What's happening around the holidays at your house, Pat?" That's you got to hang out there at Thanksgiving.
The Fitzmaurice household is a fantastic place to hang out.
It is.
Kincaid, Ferguson, or McBride? I kind of like them in that order. Are you moving Ferguson up a little bit or no?
Nope. Kincaid, Ferguson, McBride, I think is the order this week. I agree.
Minshew or Bryce Young?
Minshew.
I agree. Trevor Lawrence versus Pittsburgh or CJ Stroud versus Carolina?
They are back-to-back this week in rankings. I'll tell you this. I think you still got to play Lawrence, especially since he looked so good running the football last week. So I'm not concerned with the knee. Pittsburgh has not been great, in terms of coverage this year. I know they played better last week. I think Pittsburgh's going to win this football game. I think they're home underdogs, and I think they're going to win. Stroud has been terrific, but I think I lean towards Lawrence here. Like, I still would go Lawrence.
JSC would like us to know Will Levis eats bananas with the peel on and puts mayonnaise in his coffee, and I hope that serves him well. I've heard these things. After New England's emotional victory this week, will their tire go flat in Miami this week? Yes, and it's not because their tire's going flat. It's because Miami's going to rebound in a big way. That defense is missing some pieces.
The one thing I will say, the one thing is, it's kind of like what happened on Monday Night Football. We do our Monday night live stream, and I picked the Vikings on the money line on that game because I felt like the 49ers were beaten up. And, and sometimes when these teams are beaten and bruised a little bit, they're a little vulnerable. And I'm not saying the Patriots are going to beat Miami, but they did keep it close that first time. And if Tyreek is not 100%, and Waddle's not 100%, and now Mostert's not 100%, like you start to take pieces away and you start to force Tua to be a little bit, different of a quarterback than he's used to being this year. I think New England could cover at the very least of this game. Just putting that out there.
You're such an optimist. Half-point PPR.
Oh, I want to root against them, Bob. I told you I want a high draft pick. This doesn't make me happy. They're still going to lose, but I think they might cover. I really do.
Chuba, need two. Chuba versus Houston, Javonte versus Casey, Gabe Davis, or Ridley.
Gosh. So Ridley, Chuba, Gabe Davis, right? Did I miss one?
You did. No, Chuba,
miss?
Javonte, Gabe Davis.
Oh, man, this is a tough one. This is the kind of team where I tell people, take these assets, try to pair two of them and get something. Do you want to play every week as a flex? Because you're going to do this. You're always going to be wrong. You know, like you said about Gabe Davis, you never know what it is. He's infuriating me. I'm not into Gabe Davis. I think Chuba, you go and you take the volume and you hope for the best.
I agree with you there. Can I squeeze one more in?
I mean, I'm worried about the game script of the Javonte Williams game against Kansas City, where they just get down early, and that just becomes a bad scene for him.
I would agree. I do like Wandale falling in the pecking order. No. All right. We've done enough damage here. We've got to get out before the machine cuts us off. I'm Bob Harris. You can catch me here every Wednesday at this time with a great guest. Tonight was Joe Pisapia from Fantasy Pros, Betting Pros, and the Fantasy Black Book series. Check him out. His work is amazing, and so is he, as you just saw. Follow him on Twitter or X at Joe Pisapia17, his name. It's also in the description of this YouTube. So enjoy that and enjoy all his work. I'll be back here on Saturday for the Ask Me Anything live stream on the radio Monday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You can't miss it. SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. And I'll see you back here Saturday. Goodbye, people. Love you.